So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio.
If you missed it over the weekend and last week, the Republican National Convention had some pretty incredible coverage of the issue of abortion and highlighting the Blessed Virgin Mary to wrap up the convention. In fact, if you missed the grand finale, forget fireworks, listen to this by opera singer Christopher Macchio, who sang the Ave Maria at the end of the convention.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Maria, gratia plena, Maria.
Okay, beautiful to say the least. I could go on and play that for the rest of the show, but here's what stood out to me and why I'm bringing this up today. As I kind of ponder what we saw happen last week and some of the testimonies, such as pro-life activist and human rights advocate from China, Chen Guncheng, who spoke at the convention, or Abby Johnson, Sister Deidre, and some of the others who spoke of abortion and its impact on the human person and society. And then to see this ending of the Ave Maria, I have to say, it's a stark contrast to so much of what we see in our culture right now. We're seeing this battle between the culture of life and the culture of death, as St. John Paul the Great spoke of. And now there was a comment made by Abby Johnson in her speech at the Republican National Convention that I mentioned last week and we played for you about abortion. If you didn't catch it, here we'll play it one more time for you because I think it's one of the highlights and it's a wake-up call for those who maybe hadn't thought about this portion of abortion.
You see, for me, abortion is real. I know what it sounds like. I know what abortion smells like. Did you know abortion even had a smell? I've been the perpetrator to these babies, to these women.
Did you know that abortion even had a smell? I mentioned last week that what Abby is saying isn't some drama created for the sake of the convention to convince people that abortion hurts women and children. You see, when I have been in front of the abortion clinic, and at times the abortionists there performing the abortion on the women, children, come out because they're not necessarily happy that you're there. They brought out the pieces of the baby. Flesh, torn apart flesh. And what does flesh smell like? It has a smell. Raw, bloody flesh, especially as it continues to sit there. That's why they have to refrigerate the babies after the abortions. You see, it's fascinating because there was this Cosmo article that came out this past week commenting about how Abby Johnson's, quote, abortion has a smell comment at the RNC was right. She went on to comment about how, quote, Abby did her best to depict abortion as a brutal act and not a common, safe, legal medical procedure. She did get one thing right. And then she goes on in the article, that's a Danielle Campoamar for Cosmopolitan Magazine, about how Abby got one thing right, and it was the fact that abortion has a smell. Now, she said, it smells like when I had my abortion, the perfume that the kind, thoughtful, capable nurse was wearing as she held my hand during the 7-minute-long surgical procedure. You see, what stands out to me is the fact that this woman, if this article is true and isn't a piece that was planted, if this article is true, this woman who's sharing about the kind nurse who held her hand during her abortion, the fact that she even remembers the smell of that nurse's perfume shows that there's a very strong bond between memory and an event in her life that had a very serious significance. You see, this woman in this short, I think 3-paragraph article for Cosmopolitan magazine emphasizes that abortion just takes 7 minutes. It's safe, it's legal, it's rare, it's a basic medical procedure. And Abby Johnson tried to make this sound really brutal, but the reality was, I was in my early 20s, 7 weeks pregnant, and I needed that abortion. I think that we have to recognize that there is a wake-up call that is happening for so many people over the last 2 years with regard to the abortion issue. And it's putting people in two camps. You're either for abortion or not for abortion, and you have to double down and decide. Again, it's a culture of life versus a culture of death. And we have to stop accepting apathy or accepting poor arguments that make it sound like it's safe, legal, and rare, or as if abortion truly does help a woman, because it doesn't. It leaves her with a lifelong scars emotionally, physically, and psychologically. And that's what this Cosmopolitan magazine piece did not even touch on. Now, when I talk about a culture of life versus a culture of death, I'm fascinated because there's a story that came out that I almost didn't even cover because it's so shocking. So if you didn't know this, there's a Satanic temple in Salem. Now, they've created their own religion, and they claim to have 300,000 members worldwide, and it was founded in 2012. There in Salem, Massachusetts. Now, they're talking about their new abortion ritual. In their abortion ritual, they refer to it as, quote, a spiritual experience designed to instill confidence and self-worth in accordance to the Satanic temple's religious beliefs. Based on their, quote, religious beliefs as a Satanic temple, they're now trying to claim religious liberty for abortion rights. That they should have unfettered access to abortion and that their members should be exempt from waiting periods for abortion or from even having to see a sonogram if that's the law in their area. I think that we have to be aware when there are maybe creative new ways that people try to advocate for abortion or claim religious liberty and freedom of conscience for themselves with regard to religion, because you see, the thing is that freedom of religion is important, but it's also important because it upholds what is good, true, and beautiful. And the new Satanic temple and their abortion ritual, which, by the way, they're offering to pay for a free abortion for a woman as part of their work, just so you know, because it's a part of their ritual. What they don't talk about is the fact that abortion is a death of a person, a baby. That abortion damages a mother physically and emotionally. It harms her. And so when we talk about freedom of religion is to do good, not to harm others. And that's the stark contrast between religious liberty and creating new false religions that don't follow natural law, that don't follow truth, and don't focus on the humanity of the human person and looking at them as a body and a soul, both to be respected. And so as we talk about this culture of life versus a culture of death, we are at a tipping point in our culture where you have to choose, will you stand for life or will you stand for death? Because the options are clear before us. And again, apathy is only going to hurt more people. You're listening to Trending with Timmery. It's great to be with you. My guest joining me in just a little bit here will join me to talk about why pornography use has become more common among women. And then on a different note, the impact a pornography addiction by a husband has on the wife and the trauma that a wife goes through after having experienced that addiction, but more so the hope and healing that's possible for that marriage and for the woman who feels betrayed by her spouse's pornography addiction. My guest in a little bit is a certified sexual addiction therapist and a recovery coach for addictive disorders. We'll unpack some spiritual gems for how to overcome our own addiction and go deeper in our faith life while overcoming those harmful habits. I want to tell you a little bit about a update on J.K. Rowling, who continues to be in the news with regard to her comments about transgenderism. The latest that has come out is that J.K. Rowling, who, if you don't know, is the author of the Harry Potter series, she's decided she wants to return an award she received last year in December. You see, in December 2019, she received the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award. Now, the president of the organization, Kerry Kennedy, has now criticized J.K. Rowling for being transphobic and for her, quote, transphobic views. But what's fascinating is J.K. Rowling, after receiving this criticism from the president of the organization, has said, no thanks, you can have the award back. You know why? Because she stands for human rights. And that has to do with the right of being a biological male or female. It has to do with the right that cross-sex hormones are harmful for adolescents and adults. And it has to do with the fact that there's a great injustice occurring in our culture, that is the cancel culture we live in, that has led to the firing and defamation of good people in their careers if they do not follow this transgender ideology, language, speech, everything. I mean, we're at a point in history where we're being compelled to speak in a particular way. I'm fascinated. Why do you think it is? And I'd love to hear from you on social media. Why do you think J.K. Rowling continuously doubles down with regard to standing for what is true about the human person against the transgender mob? I'd love to hear what you think, because some people might say she has enough money, she can do whatever she wants. But we've seen a lot of other people, such as Mario Lopez, who said that some of this cross-sex hormones and sex changes for kids wasn't good. He ended up going back and apologizing as if he was ignorant for saying it was harmful for children. So Mario Lopez ended up apologizing. Who else will apologize and be silenced? You see, this is a key reminder to say what you mean and stop apologizing if what you've had to say is true. I want to speak with you now today about the important topic of pornography in our culture. I mentioned earlier that Sister Tina Alfieri is with us. Now, she's got an incredible background. She's a Catholic diocesan hermit, a certified sexual addiction therapist, and a recovery coach for addictive disorders. We're going to be talking about hope and healing for women whose husbands have gone through with a pornography addiction and it has caused trauma for women in their relationship. But first, I want to talk about why pornography use has become more common among women. Sister Tina, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. God bless you.
Now, it's interesting, we're at a point in the culture where pornography is becoming an increasingly big problem for women. We're seeing increased exposure for girls and women. First exposures are between the years of 8 and 12, more commonly 8, especially for boys. And it's impacting dating relationships as well as the wives who have been hurt by the sexual betrayal of their spouses, which we'll talk about later. But why do you think pornography has become more common among young women than it had been in the past?
I think the biggest driver of all of this with the pornography explosion is that it is so easily accessible. You know, used to, before the internet, before the days of the internet, if you wanted to purchase some type of adult material, you would have to get in your car, go drive to a usually not very nice part of town. You would have to worry about being seen going into an adult bookstore or an adult movie theater, and checking ID, being over 18 or being over 21, depending on the state you reside in. And so it was difficult to access. With the internet, that has all been taken away. we have access, if you so desire it, to porn from your living room without ever leaving your home. It's accessible 24/7. The majority of what people are viewing is free or low cost. And there is a great anonymity. You don't have to worry about running into your neighbor or somebody that you might see watching you come out of an adult theater anymore. It's just so readily available and easily accessible from your very own home and your internet-connected devices. It's just an explosion.
Right. Now, I'm wondering, Sister Tina, if people are just, specifically women, because we're talking about women looking at pornography, are women just trying to cope with what they're going through in their life? Because many people, Sister Tina, comment that pornography goes against a woman's nature. She's not as inclined toward various sexual addictions as, say, men are, especially because of the difference in how visual we are, men versus women. So why do you think this is when it seems quite contrary to the nature of a woman?
Well, you have to remember that porn is an industry. They are there to make money. And yes, there are differences between what sexually attracts men versus what sexually attracts women. The porn industry knows this. And so their porn they have different niches, different genres. And there is porn specifically made that is more, quote unquote, attractive to the female character, where it's not just people, just anonymous faces having sex together. The porn that is put out that's geared towards women has much more of a relational content to it, because women by nature are nurturers and we are very relational in context. So the porn that is out there, there's specific genres where it's much more appealing for women.
That's Sister Tina. She is a sexual addiction therapist and recovery coach for addictive disorders. And if you're just joining us, this topic today is perhaps not for little ears. And so adult topic, adult conversation, you might want to go ahead and listen to the podcast later. An incredibly helpful and important topic, but again, might not be the best topic for everyone listening. Now, Sister Tina, from your work with teen girls and young women, what are some of the key warning signs that addictive patterns may be developing?
Certainly, addictive disorders, alcoholism, gambling, porn, drug addiction, they all have the same or very similar characteristics. The first one, I believe that's key, especially with porn addiction, is secrecy. Usually teens have connection to the internet or a cell phone, and they're spending all their time in their room, or they are up all hours of the night after the rest of the family has gone to bed. They might be accessing porn, or God forbid, they might even be exchanging inappropriate pictures with someone else who might be asking for them. So I think the first thing to notice is secrecy, withdrawal from the family activities, really spending a lot of time alone, I think, is the number one marker of many, many addictions, not just sex or porn addiction, but many addictions.
Now, could these patterns be said not just of teen adolescents, but even of adults and the majority of men as well?
Correct, yes. One of the key factors for people who do have addictive disorders, and specifically sexual addiction, one of the key recovery concepts is transparency. Transparency means I'm not hiding anything. I'm crystal clear. If your spouse wants to pick up your smartphone and browse through your history, you should be able to allow them to do that and not be afraid that they're going to find anything. Likewise with the computer or any internet-connected device. When we start having secrets, hidden email accounts, dating apps that are hidden, or we keep clearing our cookies or our browser cache to try to prevent people who might pick up our phone or get on the computer after us from seeing where we've been, that's secrecy. That's also a key factor. that you're not being transparent, you're hiding. It's just the same as an alcoholic who is sneaking drinks, you know. It's the same concept of being very under the radar. You want to try to keep this all under the radar.
That's Sister Tina joining us here on Trending with Timmery. Again, a conversation perhaps for adults. You can always catch the podcast later on if you want to head over to relevantradio.com/trending. This is a great opportunity to subscribe to the podcast where you can pause, play, share, and text this episode to a friend who perhaps this might be beneficial for. Now, Sister Tina, I also want to unpack what are some of the most common addictive habits today that get in the way of our spiritual growth. And for those who don't know, Sister Tina also specializes as a spiritual director in addition to working with those bad habits. And so I think this is a fitting topic to discuss going deeper in our spiritual growth with you, Sister Tina.
Thank you so much. So I think one of the biggest factors is the concept of distraction. You know, if we want to kind of boil down many addictions, all addictions serve a purpose, and addictions serve a purpose to soothe us, to help to calm us, to help us modulate or regulate our emotions. So an alcoholic will drink because they're happy, because they're sad, because they're nervous, because they're upset, because they're anxious, because they've had a rough day. Someone with a sex or porn addiction will look at porn or get on Tinder apps and try to have a hookup for any of those same reasons. So we have to understand that addictions serve a purpose. And once we understand that they serve a purpose to help really calm and regulate our internal landscape, our emotions, we then understand that anything that's a distraction is not really healthy for us. You know, people spend hours scrolling through the internet or on their internet-connected devices. They might waste hours on TV or any other such pastimes. Anything that we're spending hours and hours on is a distraction. What are we trying to distract ourselves from? Or what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to avoid our inner landscape, that spiritual realm within us. We are actually avoiding, we're looking, as St. Augustine said, you know, I'm in the Diocese of St. Augustine. His feast day was Friday. And St. Augustine said it best, I was looking outside of myself, right? I was looking outside of myself and indulging in all those outward pleasures when what I really needed was inside. And inside is where God resides in us. So, you know, things can spiral out of control, spending time on the internet, not looking at porn, but, you know, gaming websites or just scrolling on Amazon, especially in this time of what's going on in the world today, just shopping online for hours on end. Maybe you're not even purchasing anything, so we're not talking about an addiction to shopping, but just mindlessly scrolling. It's all distraction, and it keeps us from really paying attention to that very still small voice within us where God is trying to talk to us.
Briefly, Sister Tina, could you tell us how we can work on overcoming, say, less harmful addictive habits that could lead to porn addiction or just harmful behaviors?
Sure. So I usually, when I start with a spiritual directee, one of the first things I encourage them to do is to have a rule of life, a personal rule of life, or a personal plan of life. I know that might sound very off-putting, but it's something very easy, very simple to do. I encourage folks to sit down with a piece of paper and make 3 columns. What am I going to do for my spiritual life on a daily basis? What am I going to do for my spiritual life on a weekly basis? What am I going to do for my spiritual life on a monthly basis?
Wonderful. That's Sister Tina here on Trending with Timmery. She's a diocesan hermit, a certified sex addiction therapist, and a recovery coach. We'll be right back to talk about helpful ways to heal from the trauma of a spouse's pornography use.
Catholic professionals find purpose and take your career to the next level by experiencing Tepeyac Leadership Initiative. TLI is a 5-month experience, which you can access from anywhere in the U.S. Visit tliprogram.org to learn more. Turn your Catholic faith into the driving force in your career through professional development and spiritual growth. Go to tliprogram.org now. Be part of the next generation of Tepeyac leaders. tliprogram.org.
We're talking about what you're thinking about. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Welcome back to Trending. If you have a question during the show, the number is 1-888-914-9149. Or you can go ahead and send me your question by heading over to my Instagram story. I just posted a fun photo of me sitting here on the show. You can leave a question directly there on the question box on my Instagram story. That's TIMMERIE. Now, my guest today, we're diving deep into the topic of addiction. My guest is Sister Tina Alfieri, and she's a Catholic diocesan hermit, a certified sexual addiction therapist, and a recovery coach for addictive disorders. She's joining us today to talk about Bloom for Catholic Women, which provides therapeutic and spiritual online courses for women who are healing from the trauma of their husband's pornography use. Now, this is a topic perhaps not the best for little ears, adult conversation. So if you'd like to catch the podcast later on, pause, play, send it to a friend. Just head over to relevantradio.com/trending. This is a great time to subscribe on your favorite podcasting app so that you don't have to miss a single episode. And you can also, while there, connect on social media. Now, Sister Tina, you're working closely with women who are coming to Bloom for Catholic Women. And we've heard it for years, this idea that porn doesn't hurt others. It's just a bad habit that an individual has. And I feel like we've made excuses for a number of years, especially past generations, for men who just have this bad habit and it doesn't hurt anyone else. Can you tell us what the impact of a spouse's porn addiction has on a wife?
Certainly, it's a fantastic question that you ask. What we know now is that spouses of addicts suffer from what is called betrayal trauma. And betrayal trauma is one of the worst kinds of infidelities there is, because there are so many unanswered questions that the spouse may have. I'm going to use wife. Most of the spouses who have betrayal trauma are women. This is unfortunately, though, not something just that men have as far as sexual addiction. I treat many female sex addicts as well. But the spouse, the wife, usually is extremely shocked, saddened, disgusted when they find that their spouse has been either looking at porn, going to massage parlors, strip clubs, all of this without her knowledge. It is just a shock and a betrayal beyond what most people can understand, because this is a betrayal of the primary attachment relationship. This is the person who's supposed to have your back 24/7, who committed to love you and to love you above all others, disregarding all others. So this is not just a betrayal, this is the ultimate betrayal of affection, of a life together, of hopes and dreams. It's extremely devastating for women.
That's a Sister Tina Alfieri here from the Diocese of St. Augustine in Florida. And I have to ask you a question. There's a common theme right now where couples, both married and not married, are encouraged to use porn together. So in the case where both spouses, husband and wife, are looking at porn together, does this also lead to kind of betrayal and trauma for the individual spouses?
Yes, it does, because some couples who choose to engage in pornography within their marriage, it's not unusual that they decide as a couple, okay, we'll use this together when we're being intimate. If that's their agreement, and that's what they choose to do, then that's their choice. But what I find is if someone has an addiction, they're not just viewing porn when they're having intimate relations with their spouse. They're viewing porn in the morning before they go to work, on their lunch break, when they go out to their car to drive to lunch. They take a stop somewhere, park on the side of the road, watch porn for 15 or 30 minutes, then go on about their day. So for many people who have an addiction, even though maybe their spouse is aware and the spouse is quote-unquote okay with using porn during their sexual intimate times together, most people, if they have an addiction, they're not just reserving it for those intimate moments with their spouse. They're just going ahead and looking at it whenever.
Sister, a follow-up question on that. Can you speak to the long-term impact that images have on a person?
Most definitely. So there's a concept called neural plasticity. The brain is plastic, of course, not made of plastic, but the term plasticity means that it's malleable and it's moldable. And we know that images are very difficult to forget. And again, remember, betrayal trauma is a trauma. It's a type of relational PTSD. So let's talk for a moment about maybe firefighters, police officers, EMTs, military personnel. They all get paid to go run into dangerous situations. People are shooting at them. These fantastic workers, they see things that none of us ever want to see in our entire lives. They have a trauma, a PTSD. They have images they cannot unsee. It's the same thing with porn. You can't unsee the porn images. They're in there. They're not going away. You don't forget. There's no magic erase button in our brain. So once we have seen those images, they are in there. And there's a concept with pornography, euphoric recall, where addicts will bring these images to mind over and over and over again. They don't have to be in front of a computer. They're kind of reliving, quote unquote, a fond memory in their brain because they can do that. They can just recall these images that they have had some kind of attachment to, and anytime, any place, anywhere. So it's not something that you can forget. Just like people with other forms of PTSD, they can't forget what they've seen or what they've experienced. Betrayal trauma for wives, spouses, they can't forget, right? But also the addict, they can't forget or unsee the images that they've seen. So it's very, very difficult when we do work with sex addicts who deal a lot with porn. It's very trying. The biggest hurdle to overcome is the recalling of these images. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to try to push these things out of the mind when they do come back into the mind. It's very difficult. It's a lifelong recovery from any addiction is a lifelong battle. This is not something where it's 6 months and it's over with, or 2 years and it's over with. This is a lifelong battle for recovery.
You're listening to Trending with Timmery. If you'd like to follow us on social media, just head over to relevantradio.com/trending, where you can download the podcast and connect on social media, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. We're posting links and resources on social media. Now, I have to emphasize that addiction or not, porn is not conducive with our faith. It's not conducive with a healthy relationship, marriage, or even if we're not in a relationship or marriage. It's not good for the human person, whether you're looking at it alone, whether you're looking at it with a spouse or partner, or even if it's an image that casually pops up during a late night sitcom or whatever it might be. Sister Tina here is a a specialist in dealing with sex addiction therapy and a recovery coach. Now, Sister Tina, I have a question. If you could help people understand, especially for those who are trying to share this with their friends, why shouldn't couples look at porn together?
Fantastic. Porn is, number one, it's not real. So let's just get that. It's not reality. A lot of young adults have their first their sexual education by watching porn, and they get the impression that, oh, so this is what happens when I get married. This is what I'm saving myself for. No, it's not. It doesn't operate that way. Porn is not reality. That's number one. Number two is it puts an actual distance between people, because porn is about self-pleasure and self-obsession. It's also about turning other people into objects for one's own gratification. Our Catholic faith is beautiful. The union of man and woman mirrors that of Christ with his church, and there's nothing but self-giving and a relationship of sacrifice. In pornography, there's none of that. There is no sacrifice of one's self for another. It's all, what can I get? It's very narcissistic. Pornography is extremely narcissistic. It's people who are turned in on themselves, focused on their own pleasure, their own gratification. And if that means making someone else into an object for my gratification, then that's okay, and that's what I'm going to do. It's extremely damaging. There is no dignity in porn. There is no humanity in porn. It is making an object of the other.
We used to talk about making love. Now people talk casually about having sex. And as I hear what you're saying, it sounds like mutual masturbation when a couple decides together to look at pornography. Sister Tina, I want to get into some of the incredible resources you have to offer. Bloom for Catholic Women. What resources are available specifically for women who have felt betrayed and have been betrayed by the pornography use of a spouse?
So I encourage any person out there, any woman out there who has been affected by a partner or their spouse's use of pornography or any kind of sexual infidelity, sexual betrayal, to do a Google search for Bloom for Catholic Women. Go to the site. What we have available there is we have an entire library of videos, multiple videos that discuss and break down these concepts that I'm talking about: betrayal trauma, transparency. What do I need to do as a spouse in order for my recovery, to keep my sanity, especially even if my husband doesn't think any of this is a problem? How am I supposed to take care of myself? So there's a library of videos. You can get one-to-one coaching on the website. You can also get one-to-one therapy with a therapist who specializes in sexual addiction treatment and recovery. There's also a moderated chat board, a moderated forum. I'm the moderator for that forum, where you can ask questions of other women who have been through this experience and are going through this experience. So there's a shared community in the chat room, in the forum, and it is moderated by myself. We give lots of resources there. People have the freedom to be anonymous on the chat forum, and you can ask questions that maybe you have been wanting to ask and to get answered from a Catholic and clinical point of view, but either didn't know who to turn to or were maybe afraid of outing yourself or outing your spouse by asking a friend or a pastor.
Sister Tina, I want to just, hearing what you're saying, it sounds like an awesome community for like-minded people to support each other who have been through this trauma and are working toward a hope and recovery. And it's also placed no shame associated for seeking help and wanting to alleviate some of the pain that's been experienced from this online and digital exposure that is so new to our world, yet creates such a deep hole for so many individuals who have been exposed to it. So I want to highly recommend bloomforcatholicwomen.com. Again, that's bloomforcatholicwomen.com. We're posting links on social media. Sister Tina, can you share with us a story of hope and healing after the wounds of a husband's pornography addiction?
Certainly. There's a couple that comes to mind. The husband was involved in all sorts of extramarital affairs, plural, with different women, and was also into pornography. He fathered a child outside of the marriage, and all of this was devastating to the spouse, to his wife. She found out after they were married all of this information, and she was devastated. But I worked with them for about 18 months, encouraging each of them to get into their own recovery. He entered, of course, a 12-step fellowship for his addiction. She began to work on the 12-step fellowship for her own recovery of living with an addict. They exercised their faith and their religion, and they are still together today. They have their own, and they continue to share their experience with others. I think that's important. What you brought up previously is that no shame. I'm not. There's an old saying in addiction recovery circles: "I'm not responsible for my addiction, but I am responsible for my recovery from it."
Check them out. Bloom for Catholic Women, helping heal the wounds of betrayal after a husband's pornography addiction, providing guidance and help both for the wife and the husband if necessary. Sister Tina is an incredible resource for anyone who may need it, and she works there with Bloom for Catholic Women at bloomforcatholicwomen.com. We'll be right back here on Trending with Timmery.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Are you connected with Trending on social media? Head over to relevantradio.com/trending, where you can connect on Instagram, Twitter, you name it, we're there. But also, don't miss an episode. We have each topic we cover, 4 or more topics a day, helping to be a resource for you to tackle the most difficult conversations in our culture, to dive deeper in your faith life, to become a deeper connection, drive that deeper connection into prayer, and to find a greater sense of happiness in your own life, but from a virtuous perspective, not a superficial layer of I feel happy as an emotion and that's going to go away. How do we remain joyful? I had a question come in on Instagram about abortion. What should be done if the woman is in danger by giving birth or the baby is in danger? This is a great question that I think often stumps many people because they want to be both pro-woman and pro-child. But what if something's happening for the health of one or the other? Now, we would obviously first I'll start with approaching the baby. That is, if something is happening with the child, there's some sort of health issue. Maybe it's even a diagnosis of some form of autism, right? Or some form of, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name of that disorder. A number of disorders. It could be a heart disorder, you name it. And we maybe find out that this could be the case in the womb. Could be the case. Because remember, often those diagnoses in utero are often very wrong as the child is still developing. I can tell you we even had our own scare as I'm pregnant, and we had a little scare with the baby's heart stopping for a few seconds, or kind of wavering in the heartbeat. And it's easy for people to jump to conclusions, and some people choose to abort over this. But just because there's something going on with the child doesn't give us a reason to abort the child. There are times where perhaps a C-section would be safer for the baby, or perhaps even an early delivery for the baby to come out of the womb sooner because some sort of medical treatment needs to be given to the child. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we could talk about the impact on the woman. Say there's some sort of health concern for the woman that puts her in danger if she gives birth. Say, for example, she has preeclampsia. A friend of mine had this. It's very scary. It can be a scary circumstance where some women could even die during childbirth if not properly monitored and the right steps do not occur. Now, a woman can always obtain a C-section or go through an early delivery if that is necessary. It should be noted that female doctors for women, OBGYNs, the majority of them do not perform abortions. Why? Because abortion is not a life-saving treatment. Now, say, for example, a woman is pregnant and she has cancer. She could do one of two things. She could choose to receive the cancer treatment, the chemotherapy or whatever it might be, and it could certainly put her child's life at risk. But that's not her intention. Or she could choose to forego treatment for the cancer until after her child is born. That's another option. Also a heroic option if she so chose. But she would not be intentionally harming the child if she chose to seek life-saving cancer treatment while pregnant, even if it was dangerous for the baby. But what would be harmful is if she chose to abort the child so that she could do the cancer treatment. See the difference there? See the difference of intention, and see the difference of whether you're intentionally trying to kill another human being or not? These are all key things to keep in mind. Again, C-section and early delivery are some of the options when the life of the mother or the life of a child are at risk. But we never just place one life above the other. Can heroic choices be made in terms of care? Absolutely. But we never end one life to save another. A brief moment here, especially as we're kicking off our Rosary Novena and we're going into our Rosary here, our family Rosary across America in just a few minutes. I wanted to mention a story of baseball player Mike Sweeney. Now, if you don't know Mike Sweeney, he's now retired after many years in Major League Baseball. He's a Catholic. He has a family of 6 children, 3 daughters, and 3 sons. Now, when he retired, he ended up facing the challenge that many athletes do, or might I say many who retire in general. What do I do with my time after being used to having this career of driving forward and being so active? It started to impact his marriage when he ended up retiring. And he and his wife Shara were struggling. But you know what helped save their marriage? You know what helped keep their family together? It was praying the rosary nightly together. A little bit after dinner time, they'd come together as a family and pray their family rosary around the table. Prayer can change lives and save lives. What are you willing to do to make more time in your own home for family prayer to glorify our Lord and deepen your relationship with our Lord Jesus Christ? We'll be back tomorrow on Trending with Timmerie for our marriage hour with our in-house matchmaker, Christina Pineda, taking your questions.